It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, January 2nd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is looking forward to seeing what the Flyers can do up against a tough Oilers team.
This is a tough one, a really tough one.
We'll get into that. Plus, it's Phantoms Tuesday, so we'll dig into the goings on in Lehigh Valley all on today's show.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We are over on YouTube, the SiriusXM app, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, the Edmonton Oilers are, in fact, going to be tough competition for the Flyers. Much more difficult than the Kraken and the Flames, the last two teams that the Flyers faced and had difficulty against. And so this team is just going to have to find a way to step it up, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, right now, Edmonton's on a little bit of a roll. They're finally in a playoff spot for now, but if they ever go on a losing streak, they could drop out too. But they've gotten hot. They made their changes. McDavid and Draisaitl are hot as firecrackers right now. And a lot of what you saw yesterday now, Calgary is a better defensive team. Edmonton is better than they used to be defensive, but they're not great. But then the offensive part is great. And so this is a game where you worry about the fourth line. This is a game where you worry about struggling players, Tyson Forster, Cam Atkinson. Like you struggle against them, you got to watch it because they're such good skaters. It could be a problem.
Yeah, I think, looking back on the post game after the game in Calgary, and you could sort of read a lot into what John Tortorella was saying, even though he had one word responses. Because when he gets those one word responses going, where he's like, yep, nope, that he is extremely dissatisfied with how his team played. And even when people were asking questions, try to lead him into making compliments about guys, he just was not
Yeah.
buying into it. And so I think that, a lot of guys have something to prove. To your point, Cam Atkinson has been at the top of people's lists as far as that conversation goes. Tyson Forster needs to definitely pick it up a little bit. And, before this road trip and, before the Kraken game even, we were talking a lot about the call up for this road trip to have an extra forward. And we wanted it to be somebody who they would actually rotate in there, because when you need to mix things up a little bit, whether it's to get Cam Atkinson going or whether it's to, find different combinations that can click offensively, they just, God bless Rick Gardner. He's a solid guy, but he's not the option you want here,
Oh,
right?
you need somebody offensive. Like so whoever you're going to bring in, you're going to want to boost your offense. You're going to want fresh legs. You're going to want fast, a little bit of speed. And they could have used that the last two games because, again, if you go back and you take away the 6-on-5 goals, you're not looking at much scoring at all. And with the Seattle game, you were looking at a shorthanded opportunity as the shorthanded goal as the goal, right? So 5-on-5, they're not doing much, and that's where it would have been nice to have somebody who you could rotate in to kind of spark that, like you said, and that's on John because again, that's his choice. And I understand that things were going better 3 or 4 days ago, but that doesn't mean you should never have a plan B. You should always have a plan B.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, it just gives them one less option to go
Yeah,
to, and I think when you're on a longer road trip, you definitely need an option there. It's not just for injury coverage, though that is the primary reason why you
right.
have an extra guy, but I just think that it does give them one fewer option to go to, and again, you look at the Oilers 7-3 in their last 10. All those guys you talked about, with McDavid and Draisaitl getting hot.
Good home
They're
team. They're good at home.
really, really good home team. Their last win, 7-2 against the Ducks. That is not too shabby. They won 3-2 against the Kings, and they beat the Sharks, but they also beat the Rangers and Devils as part of their winning streak that they're on. So they faced a variety of teams, both in style and in ability, and they've managed to get it done. And, I think that there are opportunities for the Flyers here, to your point, with the defensive side of things on the Oilers. Oilers score 3.56 goals per game, which is great, and that's tough to defend against, but they also allow 3.24 goals per game.
Mhm.
So, this feels like a game that's going to be 5-4 in a lot of ways, unless the Flyers can figure out a way to shut it down.
Right. I think they're going to try and play it close to the vest. I don't know if it's going to work, but I think that's the way they're going to play it because they know that they haven't had a lot of scoring lately, and they know that they probably have a better chance of locking it down. Now, they did get the first goal last game, and it didn't matter, but they're going to try
Right.
for that again and see what that does for them. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the strategy. Uh, as far as it goes for the Edmonton Oilers, they've been playing playoff hockey for a month. Like they've been trying to get back, and they finally got back. And so, you're going to see the best of McDavid. You're going to see the best of a lot of their players. And this is one where I feel like whatever they did at practice today really mattered. We haven't really gotten much out of reports of that, and that's because they're all the way out in Alberta. But today's practice to me would be very important. And that's simply because last night really was as unacceptable as John led us to believe. And I understand that because they even said after the first period or during the first period, he was yelling on the bench. We heard about that.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. Then you could make that up at practice and get things rolling the right way.
Yeah, and, if you look at the Oilers' stats since December 1st, let's say, they have absolutely improved defensively, to your point. Their goal scoring is even higher per game in that time period. It's at 4. And, you look at their power play percentage, it's pretty solid there. I think that it's gonna be a tough, tough thing for the Flyers to come back from, but it's something they have to do. If they're gonna say we're a good team, and it wasn't just kind of a fluke for those first few months, this is the kind of game they have to win.
Yeah, and I think if John wants to be fair, like he deflected one of the questions and says, "Well, that's up to Shawsey." Um, what's up to Rocky Thompson? Like, I want to know you know what I mean? Like, reporters are probably afraid to ask about the power play at this point, and John doesn't really expound on it anymore. I mean, he really just doesn't, except like maybe like a few weeks ago, he said, "Oh yeah, we're trying something different," but that's about it. I mean, it is just so bad, and it's like, and it you could feel the tension that nobody really wants to talk about it, and that's not going to help it. Like it's just, and I feel like that's a problem too in the post game. That just nothing is going to cure that except them actually scoring a lot on the power play, but nothing else is going to cure it. And it is a big elephant in the room as far as just communication goes. And I don't know. I'm sure they're working on it in practice. I haven't been to a practice in a while, but it's not working. And so, I don't know how long they're just going to keep at it, like the same way or similar ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think that, this is a team where the Flyers are gonna have to just bottleneck the neutral zone. And just make it that's where they get their turnaround. That's where they get their takeaways, and they can get going in the other direction is in the neutral zone, because I think that's kind of one weaknesses that the Oilers have
Yeah, I think that's what
is
they're going to try and do, and make
yeah,
McDavid. go round, go wide, and get you
Mhm.
know get the zone entry. But again, I'm going to even tell you last game, uh, guys like Sean Walker need to cool it on the amount of time that he pinches and everything else. I get that you're a pretty good skater, but you know what? The defense hasn't been strong enough lately where you could just go and just go right deep into the zone there. And it's like at times there's both guys are doing it deeper than what I would like. It's risky business. And as you get later into the season here, you could really get burned on that. I mean, that to me is I get that Walker has some points, but I don't really care if Sean Walker scores points. I don't know about you. It's not what I'm looking for out of him.
Yeah, I think he's gotta be, the anchor into that
Yeah,
in that middle pairing defensively. So, yeah, I think absolutely his scoring is a bonus. It's not like the main thrust of what we're expecting from him. But yeah, I do think, again, this is just a key game for the Flyers to kinda get back on track here and, get something positive to come out of this road trip overall. The Flyers, of course, do play the Edmonton Oilers at 9 p.m. Eastern, a little Flyers mostly after dark. You can catch every section. You
yeah,
can catch every second of the Flyers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. We are going to switch gears and talk about the Lehigh Valley Phantoms coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets, and with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting excited for all the fun you'll have. My favorite part of the Gametime app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute tickets and flash deals. Plus, you can get that all important view from your seat. Game Time has deals right up to the start of the event and sometimes even up to an hour after it starts. It is the place to find your last minute tickets. Also, tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Tomorrow on the show, we will be recapping that game in Edmonton as well as answering your mailbag questions. So get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can send us a message on Twitter or comment over on YouTube. Russ, little frustration in Allentown right now. This past week, the Phantoms went 1-2, which was not great because that win wasn't even that good either, to be honest. So right now they're kind of back more closer to 500 hockey, but they're still in seventh in the division, not making any headway here, and it's a little frustrating, I gotta say.
it is frustrating. We expect more. I mean, they've got players there. Missing Rhett Gardner should not mean that much. You had a bunch of guys scoring. Now, granted, they still were a bit of a one-line team at times, especially when
Yeah.
Lixell was out, but Lixell's not out. So, someone asked me the other day, like, who deserves to go up? And I still said Adder. If they wanted to give Tuamala a couple games, I'm not against that. And I would say Cooper Marody, but I don't think Tortorella would ever play him. So I don't.
No.
Otherwise, I think it would be a great story because he does work his ass off, and he's really been really good. And I like the guy as a player. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I don't know. It is a little frustrating in the sense that uh, they're not getting the results. And like I said, we just want to see one winning weekend where they actually win two or three games clean. I don't know if we're ever going to see that, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the missing link is here. I mean, it's certainly not gonna happen when your top prospects aren't performing, as well, and, I get it. It's that part of the season where guys are starting to feel banged up and, guys have been in and out of the lineup because of the illnesses that have been going around, and there's all of that. But at the same time, you got to find different ways to win here. And, when those guys aren't producing, when Lazinski isn't producing as much, when Lixell isn't producing as much, Tuamala, not producing as much.
And did I read that
Like,
Gendron had a fighting major?
yes, you did. So that's a whole other thing because I do want to talk about Gendron as part of this, but looking at those guys, at the top of the call sheet, so to speak, not producing, like you aren't going to get the results. So Cooper Marody is now the team leader in points scored with 27 points right now. It's his first week at first overall on the team. Which is great for him. Everything you said about him is 100% true, and I would not be sad if he got a Flyers call up.
No.
I think it's deserved, honestly, and I think he would fit in nicely. I think I would rather have him there than Rhett Gardner, I gotta say,
Yeah.
if you're gonna pick like an
Oh, me too.
AHL guy,
Oh, no question.
But all that being said, that's a huge part of it. I think that they're just not figuring out ways to win. They're not figuring out ways to close off teams. And they're also like when they are playing well, they can't put together complete games. So you look at the game against Hershey, which they lost 4-0. 2 of those 3 periods, the Phantoms played stellar hockey, shutting down Hershey. 4 shots on goal allowed per period for those first 2 periods. Hershey scored a goal, but it was the weirdest fluky bounce goal from behind the red. Like, should not have been a goal.
Right.
So really, essentially, kept them off the board for 2 full periods. Then the last period, it was just kind of like a little bit lazy defensively, and Hershey just stepped up their game.
Goaltending now too, the defense.
Yeah, yeah, and so it was just like they just couldn't complete the game there. And that was the most frustrating game for me this weekend. I mean, it was a close tie with that first game against Utica where they were winning 4-1 and then they wind up winning 5-4 because they let Utica get back into it with like 3 unanswered goals. So, I just, they're letting up defensively in a way that they just cannot.
Yeah, and they're 0 for the weekend for the power play. That's not good.
No. And that's part of it too. Like their power play has been like their bread and butter all season. And when you go 0 for 10 in 3 games, that's not going to help you either.
It's tough. I really would like to say, and I think it is fair to say that we are seeing some development in certain players, but the team aspect really not any better. I mean, it's really not.
Yeah.
Results wise.
Right. Right. And I think that continues to be the case. One thing I will say about the penalties, you brought up the Gendron fighting major. That's a weird thing. But the Phantoms have had the most penalty minutes in the league for the season ongoing. They've actually been getting a lot better. The penalty minutes are going down. And if you look at the stats of number of times shorthanded, the Phantoms are still the worst in the league with the most times shorthanded, but the next team below them is only 2 times below them now. So it's like the number of penalties is going down. But they're so far ahead in minutes that it's going to take like a long stretch before any other team catches up to them and surpasses them in penalty minutes, or there's just a barn burner of a game where a team gets like 80 penalty minutes in a game or something.
Yeah, I mean,
like that.
You can see the PK is fine, but the power play is sagging now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that there are aspects of the game that are good for this team. There are players that are performing well or generally well, and maybe this week it was just a downturn. I think Samu Tuamala, got to follow up with him over the next couple of weeks and just say, okay, was this weekend a fluke? Or was it something legitimate that's going to continue? And, I'm just hopefully thinking, we've got a 2-game weekend coming up instead of 3, that maybe these guys can put it all out there and figure out ways to win.
Yeah, they have to do it. What's interesting is the power play actually seems to be struggling more at home too. So I don't know if it's like they're sort of like not performing in front of the home crowd. That happens sometimes. It's happening with the Flyers this year. So, I wonder if that's going to start happening with them.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more to get into. I want to get into a few individual performances, and we will do that coming up next.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get 150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's 150 bucks in bonus bets, win or lose. The app's so easy to use that there's so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays, find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find out popular parlays, and more. And again, I would go with the Patriots over the Jets, especially if it's Belichick's last game. Just, go with it. Trust me. As a Jet fan, I kind of know. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel over on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, covering all the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today over on YouTube to subscribe. Russ, want to talk about Gendron now. He actually was one of the guys that stepped up this weekend and had a pretty solid couple of games. He played in 2 of the 3 games, so that's something we had talked about specifically, was getting him into more games. So he played the first and third game this weekend. The first game of the weekend was especially good for him. He had a goal and an assist in that win on Wednesday. Was back in on Sunday. He had an assist, and that's where he got the fighting major in the loss. Did not expect to see that happen, but it
No,
did.
that's all right, though. I mean, point wise, at least he's done well. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it just seems like it must be frustration.
Yeah, I think just the way that game went was not ideal either, because Charlotte went ahead 4-0 in that game. And, the Phantoms got a couple of back, but then Charlotte put it away with an empty netter at the end of the game. So it was not great overall. Wade Allison, I think, also had a good game on Wednesday. They actually talked to him. So I listened to an extended interview of him, and he's like, I think he's really got a good sense of where he is right now and what he has to do. And, he's working on different aspects of his game. When he can't get the goals in, he's like figuring out other stuff and making some small improvements. So
I don't
I
know. I
think
think all he's proving is that he's an AHL player and not an NHL player, if you ask me.
that may be the case, but
Yeah.
I do think that he at least knows where he's at. And I think that's important.
Okay. I don't think
Um,
that's where he wants to be, though. That's the thing.
no, no. No, but I think he knows what he has to do to get there. It's just a matter of, can he do it? And I don't know the answer to that right now. But I also think Ronnie Attard, we've been talking about him as the guy to call up for
Yes.
power play help. I still think that's the right call, because he's been playing generally really well. He's still the top scoring defenseman on the team. And I think, he had been making like a few mistakes here and there. And I think he's cleaned up some of that
I
a
still
little
think
bit.
he plays better when he comes up anyhow. I
Yeah.
feel like, there isn't, he gets a better partner. It's no offense to anybody down there, but I just think
Yeah.
he has better power play guys if he's on the power play.
Yep, absolutely. There are some guys like that play better
Yeah.
at the NHL level than the AHL level, just because they rise to the level of the competition, and he
Yeah.
is definitely one of those guys as well. And I think, like, playing with Mete has
Yes.
been good for him as well. I think they're just a good combination in terms of making each other better.
Yeah, I think that's true. And that's good. I mean, Mete's like pro like defenseman, so that does give him the feel for it.
Yeah, um, I had been upset that he and Jinning were split up, but I think like the separation between those two in terms of just how much they've improved. I'm talking about Jinning and Addard. I think that, Addard has made so much more progress than Jinning. I mean, Jinning is
Yeah.
fine. I
No,
don't have
there's
any
nothing wrong with
problem with
shitting, but
it.
like I said, and when I said pro, like I meant NHL. Like Mete's got
Yeah.
NHL experience, so it does give him the feel.
And
That's just
Jinning
an edge
is
that Yinning can't do. That's all.
right. And he's a great partner for Ethan Sampson, who's
Yeah,
like still learning the ropes at the pro level.
yes.
So it's settled out, I think, pretty nicely on the blue line as far as the pairings go. It's just the execution, I think, as the team defense execution, because it's
When are they
not
going to get
just
it together? Like 2024 has
yeah.
started. Like they gotta get on the stick here. It's I know the season runs through April, but like it gets there quick. It really does.
I do want to quickly mention some sort of non-Phantoms AHL notes, just because former Phantoms are alive and well and hurting the Phantoms as they often do. Wednesday, Max Willman scored 2 goals against the Phantoms. And our old pal Jackson Cates actually got a full AHL deal with Rockford.
Right.
He was on a PTO there for a while. So very glad to see that for Jackson, that he's found a stable home
Yep,
in
solid
the in
guys.
the
Solid player.
yeah. And of course there's like 11D, there's really only like 4 ex Phantoms on Hershey. But they always seem to
Hershey's just
figure
a
things.
problem to anyhow.
I know. I know. I was having a conversation about who were my 2 least favorite AHL teams, and it was like Hershey and Charlotte, honestly.
Yeah, and
Like,
Charlotte just
it's
won the other day. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So losing to my 2 least favorite teams in the week was
not
not
good.
ideal.
Not a good weekend
Not
for you. But just think if you were an Eagles fan, how it feels. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
I would not poke that bear if I were you,
I'm
Russ.
just saying. I'm just adding it on to your because a lot of people look on this show. I had some people telling me we were looking for the Flyers to at least beat Calgary so they could feel better about the city because like they lost to the Eagle and the Flyers didn't come through for them either, and even the Phantoms didn't come through for them. So it really wasn't a good weekend for the fans, and that sucks.
Yeah, especially when I know the Phantoms put together a really good New Year's Eve game night. So it's a
Oh
bummer to
yeah,
have them
no question.
them not win that one. But looking ahead to this upcoming week, like I said, 2 games. So on Saturday, they are at Wilkes-Barre Scranton, which I would say is in like the second tier of teams I do not like.
Yeah.
And then they've got to go to Hershey on Sunday. So Wilkes-Barre Scranton, Hershey back to back.
Mm.
It is a tall order, but
You
this
gotta
is
rise to the occasion at some point.
yeah,
Make a
yeah.
statement. This might be the statement. It's gotta have to happen. They gotta get. I mean,
I
they're in playoff trouble.
yeah, and it's really important for this team to make the playoffs.
It is.
It really is to get our prospects that kind of intensity and experience, and they got to get themselves
And it's
there,
not
though.
just for the
That's the
ones that
thing.
are there. It could be the ones that are coming, like Cutter Gauthier, let's say, and otherwise. That's a big deal if you can get a young player like that not only to play in the AHL but to play in AHL playoffs.
Yep.
Gauthier will get some NHL games too. Don't get me wrong if he comes over, but playing some NHL games at the end of the season compared to playing in the AHL playoffs, I will always tell you it's better for that player to play in the AHL playoffs.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that will do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back tomorrow to recap the game against the Oilers and have our mailbag. So get those questions in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.